Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator, geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce ourselves to the listeners and viewers at home. We're going to start with Mr. Bill. Oh, excuse me. You publish as William S. Frisbee Jr.
Yeah. So my name is William Frisbee. I'm an author of The Last Marines and several other series. One book in the Four Horsemen universe. And I'm a former Marine, or let me put it this way. I'm no longer active duty. Let me put it that way. November 10th. Happy birthday to all the fellow Marines out there.
I do still wear the silkies?
Silkies? No.
Okay. I mean, I just want to know how hardcore you were going with this. The short shorts, you know. The Last Marine series is really good, though. I have read them. I enjoyed it. So if you like military science fiction, dear listener, you should check it out. Next, we have Charlie and Travis Cox. If you guys can introduce yourself. Since you share a screen on the Brady Bunch, I'm going to just, let you both go side by side.
That's fair. Hi, everybody. I am Charlie Cox. I write science fiction and military fantasy with a sense of humor because life can be dark. So let's embrace a little joy and find the fun where we can. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I am a civilian, but my husband did serve.
Yeah, I was in the Army. So happy birthday, Marines, especially my late grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel David M. Cox, served for 28 years, World War II in Korea. Yeah, I'm just a reader. I have a lot of opinions, though.
Opinions are good. Yeah, actually, my great uncle David Lee was a Marine. He was one of the Frozen Chosen. I don't know how true this is, but he tells the story of how he became EOD. As he said, they just lined everybody up and they said, "You EOD, you not." And then when you practice, don't do it too close to anybody because if you mess up, you don't want to kill your buddy. So that could just be hyperbole. Like I never quite knew with him because he liked to joke around. But I know he was a Marine EOD in Korea.
That point of the Korean War was somewhat energetic. My grandfather was there. He just gotten in country, recalled to active duty. He was actually just south of the Chosin, grabbing whoever he could grab to relieve Chesty and his Marines up north, and they managed to break out before he had anything sizable going.
I know it's one of the unique periods in Marine history where you actually have some Marines that never went through Marine basic training serving because they actually were not prepared to onboard so many. So he was stationed there's a base outside of Paris Island at Camp McCall, something like that. It starts with an M. And they were just giving them their uniforms and taught them how to march, but they were all country boys. They knew how to shoot the rifles. And they hadn't started basic yet. And then they're like, well, you got your gear, get on the boat. And that was pretty much it. So he never actually went through boot camp with drill sergeants proper like. So I'm pretty sure the North Koreans did a pretty good job of boot camp for him, though. So.
Drill instructors as a point of order.
What did I say?
Drill sergeants.
Yeah, force a habit. Building it correctly.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That was mighty polite of you.
Make
allowances. I appreciate that. All right, next we have Christopher and Jamie Denote.
Hey, everybody. Chris Denote here, retired active duty Air Force just earlier this year. I write middle sci-fi and a few other things, and I also edit over at Raconteur Press, anthologies, copy edits, structural edits, the whole 9 yards. And I've published a few other things, too, here and there.
Now, you guys are moving on to actual proper novels and such now, too, right? You're no longer just anthologies?
We already have. Yep.
Okay. Is that going to be something you're doing regularly, or are you just dipping your toes in the water?
No, we got a full slate for 2026. Plans basically on doing one anthology, one novel by an established author a month, plus part one of a serialized novel by a new author and a boys fiction book, ages 10 to 14 or so, short novel about 40K words. And the plan is that per month of the year in 26.
We'll have to have you guys for a redux on the Small Press Radio Hour. You guys can tell us about the changes. But we don't want to forget the lovely Jamie Denote.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I also I publish under the name Lishka McCabe. I've got a few short stories out, mostly military fiction. The science part of it is more incidental. Couple stories out there with JR, and I'm also doing copy and structural editing over at Raconteur.
We did write a pilot that when Chris read it, we gave him like the Forrest Whitaker eye for a few minutes. So that counts.
No, not a few minutes. Many minutes.
Okay. I mean, that's like bonus points, right? Like you get to watch that and enjoy.
I don't know how much she enjoyed it, but
Yeah. I also did an 8-year sentence in the Army. So.
It flies, it dies. Air defense, right?
Indeed. Uber Pogue.
Damn it.
Is it? Well, I mean, someone's got to do it.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with that. I don't care. But yeah, just calling it what it is.
You had air condition. I mean, there were days I wished I had air condition.
See, that's why it's the Uber Pogue.
Or the smart ones. It depends on who you ask.
Can't be that smart. Still join the Army.
Fair. All right, Keith, if you want to introduce yourself to our listeners of yours at home.
Hi, I'm Keith Hedger. Along with writing fiction, I'm writing cyberpunk dystopian and military science fiction. I was in the Army for 10 years, and then I've contracted with the Air Force in one form or another for like 8 more years and a bunch of other fun stuff since I got out. So, go ahead.
Is there any truth to the rumor that you were the one interrogating the aliens at Area 52?
I'm just saying Area 52 is largely misnamed. It's in downtown Vegas.
Okay. I mean, there's a
Easiest
lot of
place
weirdness
to
in
hide.
Vegas.
I'm saying it's the easiest place to hide everything.
It's also possible people were dyslexic in its Area 25. I don't know.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
And Chris won't tell us. Those dang field grade officers.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
What happened to Area 52 stays in Area 52?
Area 53, and you don't want that.
Yeah.
All right.
Got confused.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get too far afield, we are going to do the religion question. And since we are only doing a panel, we're only going to do the most important of all of the religion questions. We here at the Blasters and Blades podcast are civilized human beings. We are no longer knuckle-dragging troglodytes. So coffee or tea, and how do you take it this Marine birthday, William?
Tea. Green.
What else is in the tea then? Because it is the Marine birthday.
Deny everything.
Okay. Plausible deniability. I understand.
Yes.
All right.
And I blame the dead guy.
Absolutely. Charlie, Travis, what are you guys drinking today?
So for me, I'm going to do coffee with cream and organic sugar because, got to be a little healthy-ish where you can. And in celebration of the Marine Corps, I'm going to throw a little bit of whiskey in there because why the heck not?
Coffee black.
One of these days, we should get the Ton Tavern bill that's floating around and see if we could keep up with that, with our ancestors, or if we die.
Oh, you're talking about Washington's farewell party?
Is that the farewell? I thought that was the bill from Ton Tavern.
No.
Am I mixing my history up?
It might be, man. I mean, I'm sure Ton Tavern had a pretty nice, bill at the end of the war too. But I mean, Washington's, good lord.
Yeah,
I'm amazed anybody survived.
Was alcohol not as strong back then? That's the only thing I wonder. Did we make it stronger?
Oh, they were drinking stuff like port and sherry, and it was.
They destroyed how many bottles of Madeira was it on there? 50.
All of them.
I don't even know what Madeira is. I'm uncultured swine. I drink beer.
What's wrong with beer?
Oh, definitely not.
Well, I wrote in the short story I wrote with Jamie, I did include a hard liquor in this because I wanted to show that they were sophisticated. And Chris was like, "Yeah, none of this is right. No, it's all wrong. It's all wrong."
That was me going, "No, this is all wrong. I'm going to fix this."
It was both of them. They tag teamed it when we were talking. It was just both of them. Like the cup's wrong, the drink's wrong. All of it was just wrong.
Just everything about this is not right.
Right. He's like, "That's not how any of this works."
It's okay. You're just not a Scotch drinker.
All right. So Charlie and Travis have answered. So Chris, what are you drinking?
Coffee. Either black with cream, back in the day with maybe a shot of Jeremiah weed, but can't do that anymore, unfortunately.
Okay, Jamie.
Coffee, cream. On a rare occasion, maybe a little whiskey.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, we got Keith.
Oh, it's coffee black unless it's a Sunday afternoon and I've got an extra cup to go, and then there might be some Kahlua whiskey, Irish cream, I don't know, or a combination of all of the above. But
Some
yeah,
people might call that cultural appropriation, but I'm sure there's a drunk Irishman somewhere that'll give you permission.
probably in my family tree too.
Hey, there you go.
So-
yes, as a sideline, I am working on a cocktails for creatives book at some point.
Nice.
Nice. I will buy it even if I, don't drink anything but the beer. I'll still buy it to support you because I'm that kind of guy.
Just to be clear, it gets real fun when you start figuring out how to try to make cocktails out of soju, and I want to make a Korean dessert cocktail with soju.
Been there, done that. Been there, done that.
You have my attention, sir.
Yeah, I'm
Same. Yes.
Is
When I
soju
get
a
that
rice
one-
whiskey or like a rice alcohol?
It's kind of vodka-ish with a citrus bite. They tend to make it out of sweet. They tend to make it out of sweet potatoes instead of potatoes or wheat or anything like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, back
It's
in the day.
condensed violence mixed with Article 15.
Back in the day,
Go to the bar as an E5, get out as an E1.
Back in the day, it was all that was unregulated, and you didn't know what you were going to get one of those. But these days, it's all pretty mass manufactured, right? And I mean, it's all standardized now. But there is such a thing as the soju experience.
Yeah,
and I've seen that stuff. I've seen things. Let's just put it that way.
my wife, who actually she did a tour in Korea, I somehow managed to hit every place but she's like, Korea gives you or soju gives you underdog syndrome. When I stand, everything's fine when I sit down, and when I stand up, it goes round and round.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I was stationed there from 2001 to 2003, and yeah, you could say that again.
Okay.
Amazing how much of that tour I can remember, but
That is valid. And so, since I don't want to disrupt the conversation that I know is going to be enthralling once we get started, I'm going to play the commercial now. So that beautiful bean footage, we'll roll it.
Across 1,000 battlefields and 1,000,000 wars, there is always a question. What do you do when all the chips are on the table? Do you run? Try to find salvation in the arms of an easy peace? Or do you stand and fight and send your enemies into whatever hole they crawled out of? On Deadly Ground, a heroic Last Stand anthology, has 10 stories addressing that question. Each character faces the impossible in different ways, but all will be tested before the day is done. Can they earn a heroic victory amongst the endless eternity of space, or are they doomed to fall into obscurity?
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that early commercial interlude, but I didn't want to interrupt us once we get started. So the story Jamie and I mentioned earlier that affected Chris so emotionally, that is in that anthology. So if you want to check it out, you can see what the fuss was about. Although we did edit out all the bad stuff that made him mad at us. So with that out of the way, so one of the things that I thought was interesting is the way military leadership, military commanders are portrayed in speculative fictions to be sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, all of the things. So, obviously defining terms, that's commissioned officers. And I guess we can throw in the warrant officers to that because I would say they're officers too. But obviously that's what we're talking about. Are there any officers that you guys have experienced in your fiction that you didn't write that have really stood out for you as good examples of what the kind of thing you would have wanted to see?
Well, Jared, real quick, just for clarification, are you talking about officership in general, or are you talking specifically about commanders? Because it's pretty distinct, man. Not every officer gets to command. You know what I mean? Not every officer gets to command. So I think that's an important distinction to make. So just my own edification. How do you want to go? How do you want to approach it?
I mean, I would say command, but in a line unit, I'm just used to thinking officers were in command, so I didn't really deal with a lot of people that did the other stuff. I know they existed, but I have to remind myself of that. But so yes, I'm speaking specifically of those taking charge, I guess, with the pointy end of the stick.
Hmm.
One officer that stands out to me is in Fool's Company. If you've read that one, kind of a comedy, but he's an officer I kind of like because he strode forward. He was very rich, but yet he took care of the people. So I'll throw him out there, and I'm trying to remember his name. Something Fool, Captain Fool.
Yeah.
Along
I've read it.
lines,
It's been years.
Yeah,
Yeah. His approach to everything was just like,
throw money.
did
at
you
it.
go to military training and then decide not to do that, or what? Or did you miss it all and this is just how you do things?
I was going to say, that's on my TBR list. But a number of years ago, I read Strong Arm Tactics by Jody Lynn Nye, and that's sort of similar idea, right? It's a comedy, mill sci-fi, with kind of a Stripes-like group of characters, and there was a new lieutenant there, and I honestly, and I can't recall his name because it's been about 20 years since I read the book, but this was somebody who had to learn the ropes and did it the right way, did it the smart way, listen to the people who've been there for a while, owned his mistakes, but nonetheless didn't let people walk all over him. There was, so I remember being pretty impressed by that.
Okay, well, the one that comes to mind for me is in the Lost Fleet series by John Campbell, and it's Captain John Blackjack Geary. He was the one that was frozen in cryo at the beginning, at the battle that started the war. He makes a heroic last stand. He becomes lionized way past what really happened, and then he's woken up because they find him on a random patrol, and he's kind of experiencing the way that the military has evolved or devolved, depending on who you ask, and how he's both confronting, what he believes military leadership should be, but also like how they view him in ways that aren't necessarily how he views himself. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes it felt a little angsty, but that's also when you look at the air dates. This was published traditionally, so there's gaps of time between each book. So he's reminding people who didn't read it like I did, literally one after the other. So I make allowances for that when you're reading a book that each book comes out a year later. So, but I really like that one.
This is pre-binging, in other words.
Yes, right. And so I have to make allowances, like you said, it's pre-binging. I thought that was a really good one. And if you're going, go ahead.
No, I was going to say too. Similar vein too. One of the earliest representatives I can think of was, at least in reading books, is Johnny Rico from Starship Troopers, and I mean. Because you really get to watch somebody's growth and development over the course of that. And also, even Ender's Game. Ender's Game is a good example of studying officership, studying leadership. It does end, with him learning how to, well, the whole thing is about him learning how to command.
That was Ender Wiggin or Wiggins. I can't remember. That's
Wiggin. Yeah. And of course, you got your different versions of it. I'll be honest, a lot of the good examples I recall, believe it or not, came from TV and movies. Believe it or not, that golden age of cartoons in the 80s, too. Did you guys remember Exo Squad?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. There were some, I was impressed how well they did the characters, including the officers. I mean, you saw good and bad. Guys that get an entire fleet massacred because they're stupid. And, I think in some ways they did a better job than the Battlestar Galactica remake did, to be honest. And even, I grew up as a kid when Robotech came on. Before the whole Macross, Robotech, whatever, I'm not going to get into anime geek shit right now, but, the captain of the SDF-1 was a really good example of command presence and leadership and trying to make his people work for him, and actually get things done. So I think there's all sorts of examples all over the place. And I know we haven't said Honor Harrington. That's because I haven't read an Honor Harrington book in a long, long time. I don't think I got past the fourth one, honestly, just before books started piling up because of real world stuff. But those are some of the biggies I can think of. And if you like licensed stuff, Gaunt's Ghosts, right? Abraham Gaunt, great character.
I always liked, and I know you mentioned you didn't like the remake. I actually enjoyed the remake of Battlestar Galactica, but I like the original too. But the character of Admiral William Adama, I like that he was gruff and pragmatic, but he was willing to admit mistakes. So he wasn't he didn't have the God complex that some people seem to think they need to associate with officers in fiction. And I'm sure there are some like that. I mean, but it's not default either.
Oh, I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said that I actually thought in some ways Exo Squad did it better. That's all.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. No, I definitely liked it. I mean, that's digging really kind of getting obscure, but still.
But I like that he was so pragmatic and he didn't have a problem admitting when he made mistakes. Because it was, like I said, there's the trend to do the officers bad, and if you're not enlisted, you're a horrible officer. But I've actually, some of the worst officers I served with in real life were the ones that were the Mustangs because they forgot their role. Like, so you're not a sergeant anymore. Get the heck out of my way. And
why are you in my lane, sir?
Exactly. That can sometimes be a problem. So this idea that sometimes gets floated around about what makes good versus bad, some of those tropes are just annoying.
Yeah, and some of it depends on the format you're working with too, right? If you've got a real short space and time to tell a story, you're going to rely more on stereotypes because you have to be really clear. And then, even though it's not mil sci-fi, I think too much got made of the book Once an Eagle. If any of you other folks are familiar with that one,
I read that.
Yeah, I think too many people took that to be real life. In a lot of ways. I mean, I remember for a number of years, it was on the Chief of Staff of the Army reading list. And then even I saw I think it was General Robert Scales when he retired, said it was a mistake putting it on there because it convinced too many people about stereotypes about staff versus line, Mustangs versus ring knockers. And you can have all those arguments all day long if you want. But, JR, I think you're right in that if you have the space to tell if you have the space for a good developed story, then you don't have to rely on stereotypes as much. I mean, we can all agree that Admiral Holdo from the Last Jedi was probably an uber example of what not to do. So there is that.
I think that whole movie was an example of what not to do.
Yeah, John. Yeah, you're damn right. I love John C. Wright's takedown of it. It's still magnificent.
One aspect
that movie is 3 movies that didn't get enough time for any of them.
Yeah.
One of the things that I liked was I think he was a captain, Benjamin Sisko from Deep Space Nine. Yeah. Because in addition to being a good officer, I liked one that we portrayed a dad that wasn't a bumbling idiot on TV. That's always nice because most of the time we slam dads on TV. But what I really liked when it comes to him being an officer is that he was also a diplomat, because sometimes, especially when you're looking at asymmetrical warfare, and we saw this a lot in the Global War on Terror, officers weren't just like leading men into battle. They were also having to negotiate business contracts and trade treaties and, dealing with the local sheiks and whatever. And so what he portrayed in this series that was filmed way before any of that, but was pretty realistic about the modern asymmetrical warfare experience of what officers have to do, like how multifaceted the job is, I think.
You can also point back to it's a frontier Western story, right? The frontier army in the 19th century with little forts that might have 50, 60 cav troopers in them. And that captain who's in charge of that's it, man. He's doing all of that with the native tribes or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? F troop, yeah. Mm-hmm. Look at it one way, yeah. And then, Navy ships at sea. I mean, for the longest time, there's no immediate communication with anybody, so you gotta trust them. A good captain, gets everybody home, accomplishes a mission. A bad one, well, you get mutiny on the bounty.
Who was the commander of the Olympia during the Spanish-American Civil War?
Oh,
wait,
I forget his name, but Dewey, right?
Yeah, I think he was the commander of the fleet out there in Manila Bay, right?
Well, he just had the cruiser, and he sailed into Guam and is like, "This is mine now." Planted the flag, appointed a governor, deposed the Spanish leadership, and then sailed on and did that a bunch of more times.
So I just did a quick Google. The Olympia itself was commanded by Captain Charles Vernon Gridley.
Ridley, yeah.
Yeah, Gridley. So for the period you're talking about, but I think Dewey was in overall command of all of the naval forces in the region.
Yeah.
But so what traits do you like to see portrayed when we see military leadership and specifically commanders described in fiction?
I like to see breaking the tropes.
What is that, Bill?
Breaking the tropes. You've got the brave, perfect commander, but I like to see things that are different. Officers that they don't follow the standard, I think is what I like to see, because everybody can write the generic, proud, brave officer that knows everything, or you've got the generic coward, the staff officer who doesn't know anything about combat. But I like to see those tropes broken, such as the staff officer suddenly thrown into combat and he makes a better officer than the combat officers.
Or just the fact over a normal career that he's had both staff assignments and field assignments, like normal officers tend to do in the real world. You know what I mean? That's it. I mean, you got some that tend to, stay operational or tactical one or the other, but broadly speaking, I don't think that's as universally the case as anymore.
One of my favorite books was Not for Glory by Joel Rosenberg, and it was about an enlisted. If you've read it, he was brand new to a mercenary corps, and he was a coward. He was a complete coward. And what they did is they took him and they said, "Okay, you're going to die gloriously. We're going to send you off with these local troops." And he turns around and he leads them. And he just totally broke the belief that a coward, an enlisted, a private, they turn him around, put him in command, and he's still a coward. He still can't kill, but he can lead. And that just breaks a trope. And if you've read it, I think it's an exceptional book. The writer knew military.
Yeah.
One thing that I see a lot is these officers who are like, they're absolutely perfect and they're arrogant and they're cocky and they know everything. So, to like what you were saying, William, one of the series that I really enjoy is The Lunar Free State by John Sears. And he has a character, Lorna Greenwood, who works her way up the ranks to actually become fleet admiral. And then eventually she becomes the chief executive of the whole entire lunar colony. But as she's progressing through her career, she's second guessing everything she does. She's like, am I good enough? They're promoting me. Oh my God, am I ready? And then that carries on with her legacy, because her granddaughter, who becomes Lorna 2.0, she's very much like her grandmother in that regard, where she's doing well, but am I doing well enough? Am I going to lead these people right? I don't want to lead somebody to their death. And you really get to see the inner conflict that both of these women have with, am I the right person for this job? Please don't let me let my people down. And I really enjoy stories like that, where you get to see more of the character's emotional state and how invested they are, as opposed to plot.
For me, it was like Colonel Hammer and Hammer Slammers from David.
I was about to say that one.
Yeah. The colonel more than combat, and he clearly understood combat. He's running an armor mercenary unit throughout space, but he understood his people and what their strengths and weaknesses were.
Right.
He was charismatic and humble at the same time,
and he was capable of. He knew who to deploy for what.
I think that's a great skill that when it's depicted like that, it rings true, because that's kind of a key aspect of command. I mean, your people, despite common training, aren't one size fits all, right? We all know that. And not only knowing that, but there's a lot of things, that have to be weighed sometimes. And I mean, speaking from personal experience, I had to understand manpower and how we got manpower. I had to understand how we actually got our budget every year. I had to, understand what forces I was supposed to keep ready for wartime commitments and all that other sort of thing. Ops tempo, like how far can and should you push people, in garrison versus in a deployed setting. And it's two very different leadership styles, I think, in garrison versus in the field. You know what I mean? And people
And-
who excel.
And if you're listening, that's a Hammer Slammer series by David Drake. If you wanted to check that out,
Great series.
Amazing series. Loved it. And my wife is just starting to watch the old Robotech. And she's like, oh my God, this is really good. And it's kind of accurate. And she was a personnel specialist in the Army. So she's like always around the command level stuff. Whereas I was a line guy and then got put into a major command headquarters. And that's some culture shock.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, that's where those decisions came from that you never understand out on the line. There's a reason for them.
It might not be a good one, but there's still a reason for them.
Fair.
I mean, because you only what I like to see is when somebody in command makes a decision based on the best information they got, and guess what? Maybe they turned out they were wrong, or the decision wasn't as good as it could have been. But they don't have infinite time and infinite resources and perfect knowledge. That never happens.
No.
They got to make a decision based on what they know at the time and try to do the best thing possible for it. And I like seeing contrasts, between different ways of doing it. And it's not always just this way's good, this way's bad. Sometimes it's that way is okay, that way's better. Sometimes it's well, crap, given the shit show of a situation this was in, would you have done any different?
You're making everyone's.
Yeah.
I appreciate it when the commander understands that the person out on the pointy end, whether that's a combat situation that's going really badly, or they just got tasked out to take care of a problem, some random problem while they're in garrison, they understand they're making the best decision with what they know and can see right now, because that's all they've got. And it's like, yeah, I can't really second guess you.
yeah. Are there tropes that you don't like to see used when we're talking about the topic of military commanders when you're be it on screen or on print?
The flawless perfect officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the utterly perfect officer,
Mm-hmm.
or every officer is this overbearing jerk who, if you're not doing exactly how they told you to, they're portrayed as absolute control freaks, and that's not in the real world how any of that happens.
And every lieutenant is a bumbling idiot.
Hey, as I'm editing the Butter Bars Not Large and Not So in Charge anthology, that one hurts.
I mean, to an extent, you have to acknowledge the inexperience.
No.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
taking it to a ridiculous point.
Yeah. Oh, okay, the point of the anthology. Some of
Butterbar
the guys
can't even tie his own boots.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the. Oh, I'm a fan
Go
of
ahead.
the whole. Who gave the lieutenant a map? That one cracks me up. But I never served, so I just think it's funny.
Having been lost in the woods on Fort Benning.
Yeah.
Military survival training.
But sometimes it can be used.
The perfect way to solve that trope is just to find all of the pizza delivery guys near all of the land nav courses, hire all of them, make them instantly lieutenants, and you'll get rid of it because none of them are ever lost. They always know where you are, and they always bring you your pizza.
They
That's a
do.
good point.
Valid.
Well,
And
they're
they
all
are
like E4s that
amazing.
got out like last month. So
Probably.
There's a couple things. It's like I don't know. I think one that I get tired of is that if someone is an academy grad of any kind, they're instantly the worst. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like,
So,
not just
let's-
speaking as an academy grad, because I am, but you get the same variety out of them that you do from any other commissioning source, right? I mean, you're gonna get geniuses, you're gonna get rock stars, you're gonna get borderline retards, you're gonna get dirtbags, you're gonna get people that surprise you because you never think they would have been that good. I mean, Ulysses Grant, anybody? You know what I mean? So
You went there.
Half of my OBC class was from West Point, and you could not tell a difference much between them and ROTC versus OCS.
So
And they were fantastic.
So one of the things we could play with that going forward specifically is in speculative fiction. If you're talking specifically sci-fi, the galaxy is a very large place, and if you're talking large empires, the idea that you're going to have just one West Point, Annapolis type, you're going to be every sector, every region is going to have their own academy, and you're going to end up with hierarchies. I think if you get into the deep lore of Star Wars, they did some of that. Of this academy was better than that academy, but you had to dive into the books that Disney threw away. Not that I'm still bitter or anything.
No, I mean, I think
okay.
And you did a great thing with the reservist, JR, because you actually really accurately portrayed what it's like being an officer in a reserve component. You know, when you deal with people in a different capacity, you know, Monday through Friday is, you know what I mean, outside of drill weekend or whatnot, you know, and that's something I don't think you see a lot of that at all. Hardly ever.
And it's weird because sometimes what makes it its strength is also the weakness when you're talking about a guard or reserve concept. So, for instance, like there are whole towns that they lost their entire young generation of young men, in one swipe because they lost everybody at the like Omaha Beach, for instance. There's one town, I think it's in Ohio, that had all of the young boys in that town died on the beach. Wherever the Normandy Museum is in the U.S. is the town that I'm thinking of. But that kind of stuff happened in England during World War I. So that is a drawback of the reserve guard concept. The other part of that is, you know, the idea is they bring in whatever their civilian job is as an asset to them. Well, what if their civilian job is he's a grunt on a construction job and he's the first sergeant? What exactly is that, you know, picking up garbage on a construction site, bringing to the table? And in some cases, not much.
I was going to say real world dealing with Air Force Red Horse units. You know, those guys are mostly guard and reserve, and they are construction workers in their day-to-day life. So, you know, the military gets free training out of them, you know, and they know how to manage a build site. And they know how to do those things already. They also know how to build jacuzzis at non-permanent tent city bases too, amazingly enough.
And if your job, like if your civilian job translates to your military job, great. If you're in the infantry as your day job, or your job is to be tactically proficient in the military arms of, you know, reaching out and touching somebody with a lead punch to the face, your ability to pick up trash on a construction site, not so useful. And so there are drawbacks.
But it can come in handy with digging fighting positions and reading terrain, depending on the type of construction.
Let's be realistic. What first sergeant digging a fighting position?
He shouldn't be, but Joe Snuffy is working at a construction site. Because my question is, if you manage to make it to first sergeant, why are you picking up trash on a construction site?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There are examples, and that one happened to me. But there are examples where the strength of a guard or reserve can also be its weakness. And I think everyone wants to do black or white when they talk about military and fiction. And there's a whole lot of gray area. And so, for instance, you'll hear the go to war, go to jail, and they'll tell you that doesn't happen anymore. I know people that today are serving that were given that unofficially that choice. Well, you got a reckless driving ticket and you had your young nephew in the car. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to enlist, but I'm just saying if you made that positive step forward to change your life and turn it around, maybe this ticket for reckless driving, which is a serious crime, maybe paperwork gets lost. Stuff still happens.
Lieutenant Colonel, my wife knew right before she got out in the late 90s. Yeah, that's how he got in the Army. A judge looked at him and said, "You got a couple of options here."
Well, the farther back you go, the more accepted it was. I don't know when we got rid of that officially, but they actually added that to the enlistment creed as the purpose of evasion, I think, is that the line they added. Do you know what that is?
I don't remember.
The oath. Yeah, my bad. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't know when we got rid of that officially. But but it still unofficially happens because people are still people. And if you want to give a young man a second chance, women have certain career fields as second chance or options of last resort, and men have the military. So it still happens, and I think I like to see that kind of stuff because it's real. But I love the everyman, and I think that works for lieutenants too. I think that's what makes them so relatable if you're going to write officers, because they haven't had that real world experience yet.
Yeah.
Well, who was the author? Was it Webb Griffin who wrote a series that followed a Marine Corps officer over his the entire series is broken out by the different ranks?
Yes, that's the Webb Griffin. It's an excellent series. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so a lot of times I think there's better examples of this in non-genre fiction, to be honest with you, because with genre fiction, a lot of times you almost have to default to more stereotypical stuff because it's competing with everything else in there. You know what I
People
mean?
expect it too.
You know, the setting and the storyline and the bigger picture things of it. You know what I mean? It's a lot,
Yeah.
and to try and really get like a feels accurate, even if it's at least plausible, it feels right depiction of the service. Sometimes it can be difficult,
And that's
especially if
sometimes
it's in
when
the way
you're
of the story you're trying to tell.
when you're as an author, sometimes it's like, do I write what I know is actually correct, or what the audience is going to think is correct? Because that doesn't always line up, and you run into that.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That rarely lines up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's one of those
Oh,
things where it's a balancing act of audience expectations versus reality.
It's kind of like anytime you're writing military fiction, you can't write a company of people and keep a story in any kind of reasonable length. So you're writing a handful, maybe 10 viewpoint characters, which is why a lot of the action flicks are all looks like a special forces team, because that's the number of people you can kind of track.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
So-
a really good point.
Yeah, so instead of an intelligence section, you have one intelligence guy, and he just speaks for all the intelligence people.
Yep, I did that. I did that in the story I wrote for Raconteur, because it's like I don't have time the space to write out the entire S2 shop.
But if you do it right, you can show that's you're sneaking a peek into various facets of it.
Yeah.
Is there the cogs in the machine, so to speak?
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you do it well, you almost have to do it. Start to show multiple POVs as you expand outward, because there are limitations when you do first person.
Yeah.
Are there things you think that people do well when you see with the way officers are described and portrayed in fiction? We have talked a lot about sci-fi. Have you seen, what about fantasy officers? Obviously the Lord of the Rings was it. I'm going to butcher the elven names, but hold up. Let me see if I can get this right.
Similarian.
Oh God, no! Don't go there.
I like the Silmarillion, but
A
It's,
lot of people do, but a lot of people get very upset
It's
about
the
it.
Wheel of Time character Rand Altor. I'm butchering it, but Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time is one of the officers that was portrayed as the leading the armies against the Dark One. But a lot of times in the fantasy side, they're almost always the officers are the chosen one kind of vibe going for them.
Yeah.
And so it's, how realistic are they as just the average soldier? I don't know. Maybe I'm not reading the right fantasy military stuff, but I know that's a burgeoning genre in general, mil fantasy.
I gotta really sit down and read some Glenn Cook one of these days. I just haven't done it.
Oh, he wrote such great. I read his stuff years ago, and this was like, it was fun. He didn't worry overly much about the rank structure or any of the rest of it, because the Black Company were all mercenaries anyway. So it was like, he's a captain. Yeah, he might survive this whole thing.
One series I thought did it well was Deeds of Paxenarium.
Okay.
You read that one? Because she was a private, but she dealt a lot with the officers and the Duke. I thought he did very well as an officer and leader. And as she grew up from a private moving up to a paladin, she interacted with the officers, and I think it was a very good representation overall.
I prefer it when the officers aren't a lockstep for whatever the commander says, because you find out part of some of those officers, their whole job there is to look at the commander and go, "That's not going to work. Here's why."
Yes.
So the one I was trying to, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation because I read it and I didn't listen to this one on audiobook, but Aragorn, son of Arathorn, I think, or Arathorn.
Yeah, Arathorn.
Was one of the military leaders in the Lord of the Rings series. But if you're looking more specifically dedicated military, I don't know if you guys have read Steiger's Tigers by Mark Allen Idlehite, that series, Ben Steiger. And that's basically what happens if you take the lost 9th Roman Legion and you put them smack dab in the middle of Middle Earth. It's kind of the vibe the world has. But that is very pragmatic leadership in a way we could all expect, that resonates in the same sci-fi, the same, Tom Clancy-esque, but it also has all the fantasy elements, so all the fantasy races and the magic and all the other stuff. I thought that was a pretty good example of military leadership, military commanders in a fantasy setting. To include the somewhat tragic backstory where Steiger is trying to reclaim his family honor, giving him that sort of tragic backstory as a motivation.
Well, you know what?
Okay.
I think you could use a lot of different examples of it. And what's really good about putting things in like sort of an ancient historical or fantasy setting is that gives you a lot of room to tackle things that are really big picture and not always, you know, the most pragmatic. Like we have Strider, you know, Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings, but you have Faramir, and you know he's a great example of what some would point to as a servant leader. Not to mention he fights for the right reasons. You know, that's that quote about he doesn't love the sword for its sharpness. He doesn't love, you know, he only loves what it protects. You know what I mean? So you got that, and when that's contrasted with someone who loves to fight for the sake of fighting, because that's just who they are. You know, it's a good exercise in contrast. I mean, even Conan goes through different phases where he's just some armed mook for hire to being a general of a mercenary army and then being a king.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he goes through that journey too, and the contrast is amazing. And that goes all the way back to like Beowulf. Goes back to the Iliad, Hector versus Achilles. You know, I mean, Achilles is a great leader of. He gets his companions killed left and right because what's he really in this for?
Yeah.
You know, what's it really about to him? And that gets played out even in modern day film. It's like go think back to Platoon for a good example of like that contrast, or even Apocalypse Now. You know, Colonel Kilgore. Versus, you know, Kurtz, you know, versus Marty Sheen's character, Willard. I mean, there's sometimes you can do it in a way that really contrasts these really stark things about people. Some of them aren't very pleasant.
Well, another thing, especially, and this would be prevalent in fantasy more, I think, than, well, okay, if you're doing space opera, you could pull it too, but you know, they're the third or fourth kid of the king, the duke, the whoever. They're not inheriting anything. There's not much left for them. So they make them a captain in some military unit with varying levels of how that works out. So you can kind of look at where the officer's origin point into the military was and go, yeah, you didn't have a choice because it was this, or yeah, you're basically going to get kicked out of the house or sent off on a crusade somewhere. Or, yeah, did they want to? Maybe, maybe not. Did they have a lot of choice? Maybe, maybe not. Did they gravitate to it? Did they start learning from it? You don't know. You can write a lot of different stories off of that.
Well, you know, good example, too, is like Henry V. I mean, he had to play historical, but, you know, you see Henry grow into his leadership role, and that gets contrasted with the common soldiers and the, you know, the sergeants and whatnot. And, you know, Henry's got to apply justice at some point. Where how good of a fighter somebody isn't going to save him from the fact that, you know, he's a thief and a murderer. You know, he's got to, and he has to dispense justice, or he loses his legitimacy as king. You know, in the eyes
it's
of
valid.
You know, so I mean, that's the thing that gets left out about it too. This is it. I think this is really it. You sometimes don't see is commanders have to make decisions that they don't want to make.
Yeah,
but they are compelled to make because of their moral obligations, or it's really about tough choices at times. Yeah, how many second chances do you give a troop who just doesn't get it? You know, that sort of thing before you lose credibility. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
There's this great quote, and I wish I could remember. I have to paraphrase it. I'm not sure if he said it or if he was quoting somebody else, but Sean Parnell, he was a lieutenant in GWAT in Afghanistan. He wrote Outlaw Platoon, and he said, all military leadership in combat, it's about love. You have to love your troops, right? But you also have to be willing to kill that thing you love. And that's combat, combat command leadership, whatever level. You have to love those troops, but you have to be willing to kill them for the mission. Mission man.
Yeah.
I am sending my troops out, and I know some of them may not come back. And in some cases, I'm specifically telling them, we know you're not coming back. We need you to hold this.
You have to go out, but you don't have to come back. Yeah. Well, still, my grandfather lost one man in combat under his command. I believe it was on New Britain, early days of the Guadalcanal, Solomons. One guy, it haunted him the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Well, some things too is, and I got to hop off for a minute here in a second, but we're talking primarily about ground forces and all that too. It's a different story when you look at air forces and even naval forces, right? Because you have a fighter squadron that's mostly full of peers. Leadership among your peers and a first among equals type of environment is different. And if you've ever seen like The Great Santini or read it, or and actually Michael Stackpole did a great job of this with the X-Wing series, I thought. More, when speaking of Star Wars books that no longer exist, supposedly. I thought there was some good examples.
They're in my library.
But it is different. It's different because, it is a group of mostly officers, right? And, and there's that component of, it's not just a matter of, do you have the rank? Are you really that good? Are you that good in the jet? And because if you're not, that gives a different leadership dynamic. And great example of that is Vietnam, Robert Olds and Chappie James. So if you're not too familiar with those and stuff, that's definitely worth looking up, because you can pull character archetypes and story ideas just from Robin Olds' memoir.
You see some of that in the Babylon 5 series with the Captain Sheridan and Lieutenant Commander Ivana, something like that. But also you saw the pilots in that one as well, because they focused on some of the fighter stuff when they were defending the station as well. So you get a little bit of all of that in that series for the various aspects of what being in charge looks like. You saw some of that in the Battlestar Galactica series when you were talking about the pilot leadership and what that looks like different than, say, what I would have seen on an infantry unit or what a naval officer sees on his battleship, and all the different aspects of it. And they are slightly different, and they require different skill sets, probably the same personality traits.
Space
I'm
Above
surprised
and
no
Beyond,
one's.
too.
Go ahead, Bill.
That
Surprised
show,
no
but-
one's.
Yeah. But Space Above and Beyond was a lot of that fighter pilots
Thank you.
working together. I couldn't stand it
That's
from
what I
a
was
Marine
trying to
point of
say.
view, but it was.
It did have Arlie Emery in it as the drill sergeant again.
Mhm.
That show was great and awful at the same time, but
Yeah.
I focus on the great. You see, like some of so they had these Marines, right, and some of them in the background were probably prior service Marines and their uniforms squared away, and then you get to the main characters and it's tore up from the
Yeah,
floor up.
I couldn't understand that series. Recon and one supply pilots and another fighter pilots. Yeah.
That was a hot mess.
camaraderie. Yeah.
But I was watching. I was a teenager. I was like 16, 17 years old when it came out, and I loved it. And then I went to basic training, and I had my VCR, for those of you who remember, programmed to record it while I was at basic, and it went off the air. So I had a lot of Oprah Winfrey when I came home. That was not
Have you
amused.
Have you guys seen the movie Wing Commander?
Yes.
It was another good one that focused on the pilot angle and how their interpersonal dynamics were slightly different.
I played the game.
It was a game. I just seen the movie.
It was a game before it was a movie.
What kind of game was it? Was it a video game? Was it a tabletop?
It was.
Mark Hamill was actually in one of them, the video game.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that was
actually
huge, man. Because like the technological jump in games was like huge right at that moment. It was a big leap forward, man. I remember that thing just being stupid popular.
Wing Commander was a lot like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, so it's all flying.
Yeah, you're never really clear on who they're fighting or why, just that they're fighting them.
What was that one? Enemy Mine.
Oh,
that was fun.
Yeah.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, that's a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
I I was thought about the Last Starfighter, but he's not really an officer. He's just a pilot. They didn't really he wasn't in command of anything but himself. So I don't know if that really fits.
Yeah, but
it's almost like it's at the beginning of his journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, if they do a sequel to that, where he's now leading the Armada or to defend the space, whatever, for round 2, that could be the command journey. But at least in the first one,
he'd have to be the admiral or commander by this point.
I mean, it's been long enough at this point. If they want to take the story forward, that's what they'd have to do. But I don't.
They could pull a Top Gun too.
He's a senior
He should
captain.
be an admiral by now.
He's a senior captain, and that's been memed the hell and back. Senior specialist.
Oh, so gone.
It was funny to me listening to Navy guys like try to do the math on how Maverick could still be in at this point, still be a Navy 06, and all that. And the answer I remember after reading yards worth of internet, really deep Navy personnel stuff is that yes, it's remotely possible.
Well, they never give a date, right?
Yeah.
It's not like
true.
they never give a date in the original movie, but you can date it to the aircraft, right? So A model F-14s to EF Super Hornets. So you can compress it within that and then suspend your disbelief because that movie was awesome.
Both of
Yes.
Well, I mean,
I think the second one's even better than the first.
They did commission a 70-year-old doctor to fight in Afghanistan. So I'm just saying, strange things happen in the exigencies of war.
When did your mom come in, Jay? When did your mom come into the Army?
Oh, that was 1989.
How old was she?
49 years old.
Yeah.
This guy had been an officer as a doctor. He got out, and then he didn't resign from the IRR because he thought he resigned from active duty and that was enough. So he was still in the system, and they sent him a letter, and he's like, "Well, I got nothing else to do. I'm retired from my regular job. Why not?"
That's gonna be
So they called him back, and he was a doctor in a MASH unit in Afghanistan. But yeah, so I know retirement works a lot different for officer corps, so maybe it's possible.
Well, it depends on what you're. There's like limited duty officers, chaplains, doctors, stuff like that. And they can go a lot further. I think the last World War II veteran retired in like 99 or 2000 or something absurd like that. We had non-vets in GWOT up until like the mid-aughts.
Yeah.
I tell you what. When I was a lieutenant in the A-10 squadron in Korea, that's divesting its A-10s and deactivating for a while, unfortunately. But we had one or two pilots who were Vietnam era. Still, I mean, so this was 2001, 2003. They were the last of the last. They were either senior generals or they were like one particular guy we had gotten out, stayed out for a long time, managed to come back in because, again, 20, 30 years ago, things were a little different in terms of the rules on that sort of stuff. I guess the point being is sometimes it is different. I mean, I did just shy of 26 years. Total. So, in terms of, how all that works, going between different components to active, guard, whatever, full time.
And I think it also, from a fictional perspective, it depends on the nature of what they're doing. Because if you're using your mind on a starship, presumably you could be a little older than, if you're leading the charge with the, Imperial Space Marines up whatever hill, that requires a level of physicality shy of nanites or something. Like you got to make allowances for the limitations of the physical body.
I know we touched on it earlier. One of the more interesting military commanders in science fiction is Honor Harrington, but an aspect of it that I find fascinating is it's a prolonged society, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she appears to be, biologically 30, but she's like 80, and she's been at war for 50 of those years. What's that do to you? 50 years of combat,
So it's
in the Clash of Steel anthology from Bayonet. I have the commander in the fight is literally 3,500 years old. She started her life as a tank.
Oh wow!
So you get bored after a while, or you just
She founded an entire star nation that the aliens are coming to eat, and she went, well, I can't stop everybody, but I'm making sure this bunch doesn't get through.
Well, like Warhammer 40K tries to deal with that, with how long-lived the Space Marines are and stuff like that. But I don't. You got to really dig through it to find the authors. I think sometimes that do more than just give you great action scenes, and that's no disparaging any of them. But sometimes you get stuff that ends up being really sort of deep and effective because it kind of plays things through to their logical conclusions. It's like, okay, just like you said, okay, so what if you've got a dude who's been doing this nonstop for 700 freaking years?
Yeah.
What would that do to somebody?
Did you read Baneblade?
Does death become terrifying? If you're at combat, you're in combat for that long, or does it become a release?
How do you think
you
about
potentially
your
live
truth?
1,000 years, or you could die, at 30, even though you missed the other 970. But like, that comes down to
Yeah. How do you deal with the fact that the group of people you're currently serving with, some of them are not going to survive this, and you've been through this for decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years. You've just seen this over and over again. Does it really? What is the emotional or mental impact of that over time?
They had that in Baneblade where the officer kind of snapped. He was the commander of this tank. There's like a super tank though, because they're go big or go home. It's Warhammer. He ends up standing on the front of the tank with his sword because F you, why not?
He's not worried about. He's done.
But the one of the things we didn't talk about is how, when you talk space navies, how they get around. Are they using FTL? Because if they are doing like the cryogenic freezing, that's like everybody they leave behind is going to age out, maybe even die. If they aren't using cryogenic freezing and they're just using FTL, they're still going to age differently than they are on this craft. So you're going to almost end up with cultures that are, each ship is going to be different cultures from each different ship based on when the crew took on board, different than the various planets. And it's going to create a weird dichotomy because when you enlist, you're walking away from, or when you join,
literally
you're walking away from everything.
Oh,
Timothy
and when you
Hassan did a really good job with that, I think, in his Covert series. Maybe not on like extended time scales, but like Joe Haldeman's The Forever War deals exactly with that.
Yeah.
And he did that to show a contrast between the American society on their way just over the course of the Vietnam War, sort of extrapolated out. But, that time dilation from relativistic travel was a big part of it. The whole book takes place, I think, over several thousand years, and the society they come home to ain't the one they left, not by a long shot. I never read any of the sequels.
And what does that do to their pay? Because the logistics are like, wait. Am I getting like multiplied? Is it in a bank account collecting interest? Because I'm rich. When
taxes will take care of that.
You can find John Glenn's travel voucher for the Moon TDY online if you want to see how it's going to affect your pay. Good luck.
Is it really out there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is brilliant. But my other question is, you put me in cryogenic sleep. I'm a Marine on a ship going somewhere to fight a war. We come out 50 years later, and everything we got that was cutting edge when we left is antiquated junk now. We don't stand a chance.
And it also affects
50 years? 50 years?
It also affects families.
I'm picking a number.
Tim Taylor covered this in his Sleeping Legion series, or Human Legion series that I wrote my Sleeping Legion from, is he has a guy who goes to sleep. He's got a twin brother, and he wakes up at 19 because they left him frozen for so long. And his twin brother is now like in his 60s as a, colonel or whatever, and how that can mess with familial timelines. And potentially he's meeting his grandchildren, or like a great grandnephew, whatever the fine line, the siblings down his brother's line, he's meeting them, and he's younger, but they're 3 generations down, kind of thing. And you're going to mess with familial timelines that way too, when you start doing that. And then what that does to a military structure when you start messing with that as well. It's an interesting thing to consider. But Bill, you were going to say something.
What?
Bill was going to say
Bill?
something.
You about to say something? Okay.
No, I just agreeing.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept though. What the travel angle does, and what age and longevity of war could do to people.
Mhm.
Oh, that's kind of veering off topic. That might be another topic for another day. We are at the hour mark, and I have promised my listeners I will do better at keeping us on track. I have so far failed miserably. But is there anything we haven't talked about you think we need to cover on this topic, broadly speaking, before we narrow it down either by archetype or by subgenre?
You know what?
Well,
I've seen. Oh, sorry, Charlie. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I was just going to say, speaking of the whole time dilation thing real quick, Interstellar, I thought, did a really good job of that, where when he leaves Earth to go try to, save humanity, his daughter's 12, 13, something like that. And by the time he comes back, in his mind, he's only been gone a few days, a few weeks, something like that. She's in her 80s and on her deathbed, and he's meeting his great-grandchildren. So I thought that was a definite mind warp to try to wrap yourself around. It's interesting.
And then
Sorry,
there
go
was
ahead, Russ.
Revelation Space.
There was
That
a
series.
good series about the U.S. Navy and the future U.S. Navy in space, but it was like JAG in space, and it was really good. I used to read that one a lot. It's been a while because one, it was popular after A Few Good Men came out. Go figure. But also just because military justice is such an important part of it. If you're a commanding officer, at any level, dude, you got some power, that could be used for good or for ill, and that whole process, it makes for high drama, that's for sure, if you're writing it.
Yeah.
Or can.
Especially if you go out and you come back and all the laws have changed, so the law that you've been practicing isn't law anymore. What's that going to do to you?
That speaking of laws, we haven't really covered the one topic that comes to mind: the British, the system that you see sometimes in fiction, where you could buy your commission, and what that does to leadership styles. Where is it competence or is it social nepotism, in fiscal ability to buy commands? Like, well, how you pick the officer becomes an interesting subnote in the worlds as well.
Fool's Company.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and see how common it really was. Sometimes I seem to think that it's more of a trope than reality. I don't know. It's been a
it was common.
So you could purchase a commission, but it didn't get you a command. So, in the King's Army back, in the 17th century, whatever, you get a commission, and you'd have a station within a regiment, mostly back then. Didn't get you command of the regiment because the king was not going to throw away his regiments to appease his nobles. It did happen. Obviously.
If you wanted to look into that more deeply, the guy's YouTube channel is called Redcoat History. He breaks down a lot of the history on the British military history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, it happened. Yes, it was common. Even still, because the nationalism and the pride in their country, the pride in service, it still produced relatively good officers. Everyone obviously talks about the charge of the Light Brigade as the example of how bad it was. But for every one of those, you had, 10 others where, they did heroic things on the battlefield. And even then, the charge of the Light Brigade, some people have argued that didn't happen the way we colloquially think it did. But that's a whole nother conspiracy theory I don't want to go down tonight. So as we bring this to a close, I'm just going to go around Robin. Keith, well, hold on. First, this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part. That really does matter. And with that, Keith, how can we find you on the wild, wild interwebs?
The simplest way to find me is hit keithhedger.com or look me up on Facebook. I'm all over the place. So if you hit keithhedger.com, you'll find me pretty quick.
Fracking standing. All right, Travis and Charlie.
You can find me at charliecox.net and charliecox.com. Notice there is no E in Charlie. If you put an E in there, I don't know where you're going to end up on the internet, so consider yourself warned. I'm also on Amazon. I'm on all the socials. Come hang out. Come send me a friend request. And it's been fun hanging out.
As for me, don't. Just don't.
I will say, you could find him. Rumor says he's out in the Pacific Northwest hunting for Sasquatch. I don't know how true that rumor is, but I have heard the rumor.
We're gonna have.
Why do I feel safer typing that E in Charlie Charlie Cox instead.
I don't know.
All right, Chris, how might we find you on the Wild Wild interwebs? And as usual, links are in the show notes.
Sure. Jamie and I have a shared Facebook author page, and that we need to update more often, but we do an okay job of it. Otherwise, we're on Amazon. She's got herself listed as Jamie Denode and as Lishka McCabe. I'm on there as Chris Denode on Amazon. I do have a pseudonym, too, for a small number of works that you can find as well. The primary, also, you can find us posting over at Racketeer Press Substack. And every now and then I post reviews over at Upstream Reviews as well, also on Substack.
And if you want to know why they haven't updated it, Jamie is holding the reason that they are a little bit behind on their social media.
That's a great reason.
Yeah.
That's a great reason.
That is far from the worst reason.
It's
That's a
quite
good one.
manly, though.
And Jamie, do you have anywhere that you especially hang out other than the ones that Chris named on your shared Facebook?
No, he's got it.
All right, outstanding. And William, where might we find you on the Wild Wild interwebs?
I can be found at Facebook, William S. Frisbee, my website, williamsfrisbee.com, also thelastmarines.com, and on Twitter as William Frisbee.
Okay. And you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until they are able to see all of the goodness in the world, and their hearts are no longer cold and dead. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee, you can use the link in the show notes. The discount code is Podcast Grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And lest we forget, we would like to wish all of the Marines out there a happy 250th birthday. I tell you, you don't look a day over 230. And if you're listening the day after we launch this, happy freaking Veterans Day, people. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We will indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, thank you all for coming. This was fun.
Thank you. Lots of fun.
Yay, it was fun.